Breaking news of arguably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, Chavez Sr. He suspects Canelo Alvarez to be on growth hormones, HGH. Check it out.
Pues es un poco, sí es un poco cansado, ¿me entiendes? Porque siempre están comparando, ¿no? a cualquier pelo. Primero cuando era Morales, después Barrera, después Juan Manuel Márquez y ahora Canelo, ¿me entiendes? Pero, pues, Claudia, las comparaciones nunca son buenas, ¿no? Cada quien creo que... Mira, Claudia, te soy honesto y sinceramente, siempre lo he dicho, no me considero el mejor peleador mexicano de todos los tiempos. Yo creo, Claudia, que cada mexicano campeón del mundo, de los que han hecho historia, han sido grandes en su momento, ¿me entiendes? Ahorita el Canelo, lógicamente, es el mejor mexicano de todos los tiempos, ahorita en la actualidad. Pero ya que tenga que termine su carrera, y de todos modos, voy a seguir siguiendo yo el...
Sigo siendo el rey.
Siendo el rey.
A ver, que saltan los mariachis.
Claudia, las estadísticas no mienten, ¿me entiendes? Cuando un peleador llega a 90 peleas invicto, entonces me dices, yo creo que ni tú ni yo lo vamos a ver, Claudia.
¿Que se repita?
Pues yo creo que ni tú ni lo vamos a ver otra vez, ¿me entiendes? Un peleador para que llegue a 90 peleas invicto, pues va a estar difícil, ¿me entiendes? Canelo ya ha perdido una pelea, lógicamente, pues ha evolucionado muchísimo, es un gran peleador, un peleador que está ganando muchos títulos, pero las estadísticas ahí están, Claudia. Entonces yo no soy nadie para decir que soy mejor, ¿me entiendes? O peor.
Y hablando precisamente de límites, yo tuve el gusto de ver gran parte de tus peleas y toda tu carrera. Nunca pasaste de las 147. Tradicionalmente el boxeador mexicano no es ni de estatura ni de tamaño. Sin embargo, vemos esta ironía en Canelo, que lo conocimos en la 147 y ahora está peleando en la 168.
Sí, porque es un peleador, su complexión le da para eso, Claudia. Si tú ves el Canelo, pues muy espaldón, tiene unas piernonas. Y es un peleador que se adapta en 154, 168, 175, lo ves, y no se ve gordo, ¿me entiendes? Yo, la verdad, pues yo nunca pude dar 147 libras. O sea, no...
143 fue lo máximo.
Lo máximo que di fueron 141, 142 libras cuando peleé con De La Hoya y cuando peleé con Whittaker. Pero nunca pude dar yo 147 libras, ¿me entiendes? Y la verdad, o sea, a mí no me dio para más, ¿me entiendes? Porque mi comprensión, pues no me lo da, pero hay peleadores como Canelo, que la verdad puede pelear este peso completo, yo creo, y se va a ver así como te gustan a ti.
Unas uvitas, así. Hay que sacarlas así del racimo. Pero hablando en proyección, el boxeo mexicano hoy por hoy, gracias a una figura como Canelo, una figura como tú, como Finito López, ya tienen una proyección internacional. ¿Cómo asumes tú eso, ese papel internacional del boxeador mexicano?
Pues al principio cuando era peleador con mucha responsabilidad, ¿no? Pero no es esa época, pero está en una época, ¿me entiendes? Donde, pues gracias a Dios, el muchacho ha crecido boxísticamente enorme, ¿me entiendes? A lo mejor no hubiera competido, ¿me entiendes? Pero hubiera sido mucho más difícil, ¿me entiendes?
Bueno, pero estamos en esta época y mucho ha cambiado en el boxeo. Recuerdo cuando José Chivata Flores fue uno de los últimos que peleó 15 asaltos. Hemos hecho muchos ajustes en lo que es el boxeo moderno. Desde tu punto de vista, ahora como analista, ¿qué tiene que cambiar en el boxeo?
Pues tiene que cambiar, Claudia, de que el peleador tiene que defender su campeonato, Claudia. ¿Me entiendes? Ellos escogen a los peleadores o agarran los peleadores o los promotores. Escogen las peleas para que les genere más dinero. O sea, se ve que en la actualidad se basa más en el dinero que en lo deportivo, Claudia. Es mi punto de vista, ¿no? Porque si tú ves, Claudia, en la actualidad, ay, Dios santo, la cantidad de campeones mundiales que hay en la actualidad es increíble, Claudia, la verdad. Ya yo lo dije en son seria y que el travieso se me echó ahí pero cualquier pendejo, cualquier tonto, la neta, con todo respeto, es campeón del mundo ahora. Porque hay muchas más facilidades que campeón interino, que campeón
de diamante, plata.
De diamante, plata, no, hombre, no.
no hay uno.
Ya me dan ganas de volver a ver si hay campeones mundiales
Tú ya te despediste.
de los 60 años.
Para allá vamos, si tú vas yo voy. Pero aquí antes de despedirnos, te voy a poner contra las cuerdas, que tú sabes que es mi especialidad poner a la gente entre.
That was the legend, the myth, the one and only Chavez Sr. As you all heard, Chavez Sr. believes Canelo Alvarez is on PEDs. He stated, quote, Saul Canelo Alvarez is a fighter who adapts at 154, at 160, at 168, at 175. Maybe I don't know the magic trick for it. You know what I mean? It's true though. Now there are a lot of growth hormones, lots of magical little things. End of the quote. Now, Chavez Sr. tried to catch himself by stating natural supplements afterwards. However, Sr. already have spilled too much of the truth. I mean, there is nothing magical about nutritional supplements, and Combuterol is definitely not a nutritional supplement. There is nothing natural about it. Last time I checked, nutritional supplements don't cure stamina issues. However, Combuterol does because it's a growth hormone. With the facts being stated, to all you Canelo fans, don't hate the messenger. Don't hate the person that's reporting the news. Hate the message. It wasn't me who said this. It was arguably the greatest Mexican fighter of all time, Chavez Sr., who did. Chavez Sr. is the one suspecting Canelo being on something magical, HGH, which he have every right to, because Canelo Alvarez cheated in the past against Gennady Golovkin by taking Combuterol. He tested positive for steroids, failing both the A and the B sample. Therefore, don't hate the messenger, hate the message. Now, after Chavez Sr. made these remarks on DAZN, they completely buried this interview. Apparently, DAZN haven't got the memo. That's something not possible during this digital age. Furthermore, I completely agree with Chavez Sr. for multiple reasons. He made valid points. I mean, how else would you explain Canelo Alvarez no longer having stamina issues? They mysteriously went away. Now, it's one thing if Canelo wasn't dedicated, at least back in the day when he had stamina issues, and now he's dedicated. However, Canelo Alvarez have been dedicated his whole entire career. Therefore, that's clearly not the case. So how did Canelo Alvarez magically got over his stamina issues? Like Chavez Sr. said, the magic is in the growth hormones, HGH. Canelo Alvarez did perform a magic trick when it came to his stamina issues when he started taking Combuterol. And after Canelo tested positive for Combuterol, the WBC president, Mauricio Suleiman, increased the Combuterol limit when it came to drug testing. How ironic is that? Now, Canelo is free to use these magic tricks to get over his stamina issues legally. I mean, how do you explain Canelo Alvarez gassing out against Austin Trout, Angulo? Against Trout, Canelo threw 2 punches in the later rounds. And against Angulo, he hit Angulo with everything, every single thing, and still gassed out in the later rounds. However, today, Canelo Alvarez against the bigger guys at 168, he's like a machine. He gets stronger as the fight goes on, throwing more punches than ever. That is not natural. A fighter who always had stamina issues can't just all of a sudden get over his stamina hump. A fighter is either blessed with having stamina or he's not. And if he's not, then all of a sudden he is. That's when PEDs came into play.
They're breaking their own rules or not, doing what they, put in place. It's a slap in the face once again for boxing, and once again, WBC. Hey, we back Canelo, we be crooks, whatever you want to call them. That's just what it is, man. It's wrong. It's not right for boxing. Doesn't do anything good for boxing. But as far as Canelo goes, I could just tell you this. Canelo used to get tired. I remember, man. I'm telling you, he used to get tired. This is a guy with 40-something fights at the time. He used to get tired. He got tired in the Danny Jacobs fight. He got tired in a couple fights beforehand. I know that was some time ago, a few years ago, but he would get tired second half. In the first Triple G fight, he got tired. But then now all of a sudden, this dude walking guys down. This guy is not getting tired anymore. This guy is actually knocking out guys now, breaking faces. You know, and so it just raises a flag. That's all. I think the facts are there, and these are the findings. You know, and I just think it's kind of odd. So.
The second thing is Canelo Alvarez physique. Like Chavez Sr. pointed out, Canelo Alvarez's body adapted at 154, 160, 168, and 175. Like it's his natural weight class. Every time Canelo Alvarez moved up in weight, he gained nothing but lean muscle. No fat at all, even though Canelo is only 5'8". Now, one thing in common about Mexican fighters, their physique is not that muscular. However, not when it comes to Canelo Alvarez. That is not the case. And even when he's moving up in weight, he's keeping the same physique. He gets more muscular without any fat. Now, unless Canelo Alvarez is not Mexican and he happens to be Irish, maybe then y'all could explain his body physique. But definitely, just like Chavez Sr. suspected, since Canelo Alvarez is Mexican, the magic trick lies on the growth hormones, in which Canelo Alvarez used before, Combuterol. That's not up for debate. Here is what a former champion Paulie Malignaggi had to say when it came to Canelo Alvarez moving up and down in weight.
Canelo Kovalev, who you got?
You know, come on. I've given my opinion on that fight. I'm not going to talk about that fight.
What do you think?
You know, we just lost Patrick Day, and I think people got to really start opening their minds to PEDs in this year. Just because guys aren't failing because the testing sucks doesn't mean guys aren't on it. I'm not blaming Charles Conwell. Whether he is or isn't, it's not my business. Whether anybody is or isn't, it's not my business. But I will tell you, it's not easy to diminish deaths. If you're gonna not test for PEDs, and nobody comes up positive for PEDs, but guys are dying. You don't even know or not know if that's what the cause is. I'll tell you what, everything diminishes a little bit of a few levels if you start testing a lot. But that's a different conversation.
What do you make of all that?
I'm not gonna get into it, man. Please, this is a fucking joke. Yeah, come on. You know what you do? I tell you what you do. You gotta give. Listen, if you give a 6-month suspension, okay, with no fine and no consistent drug testing after that, what's the point? The guy can just go home right now and he could be doping up right now for all we know. He's suspended. He's not getting tested. He's not doing anything. Okay, the way you handle that, if you want to give a 6-month suspension and let it play out, you fine him. You give a 6-month suspension, and then you put him on a 2-year probationary period where he's consistently and strongly random drug tested throughout the next 2 years. And if he fails any of those tests in the next 2 years, you add 2 or 3 years to that suspension. So then it becomes a 2.5-year suspension. But you know why they won't do that? Because they don't want to actually catch Canelo's cheating. Because if, God forbid, you catch this guy cheating again and you got to suspend him for 2-3 years, then you all lose money and it's a big problem. So nobody actually wants to fix
testing in Mexico.
Yes, that would be. That's why he mistimed the cycle.
Surprise!
He mistimed the cycle. He didn't expect them to show up in Mexico. You know what I mean? He didn't expect them to come show up in Mexico. So he thought like, okay, I'm gonna get to Vegas. By this point, it's gonna clear my system. Nah, my man, we came to surprise you. But I'll tell you what, that's about the time you start testing for a May 5th fight. Is early September, early February, right? So this guy was doing it during his time off, which is the problem in general for if you don't have year-round random drug testing. These guys are gonna do it during their time off consistently. So part of this suspension problem should be 6 months suspension, 2-year probationary period where you're drug tested all the time.
Last but not least, here is an expert on PEDs, Victor Conti, on how frequent PED usage in the sport of boxing is, how beneficial it is, what's the process of cycling off PEDs, and how flawed is the system in the sport of boxing. Check it out.
So why does it take day after day after day? And let me give an example. When Nonito Donaire fought Casimero, they dragged their heels for 7 days. Now, Memo Heredia, who was advising Casimero at the time, a known drug supplier, he said, I can clear any drug in 48 hours. Well, why, when they got the letter on Tuesday, did they not submit the forms until Saturday afternoon after the fight had already been canceled, because they'd been told every single day that they were going to cancel the fight if they don't get the forms in. Then they cancel the fight, and mysteriously the forms show up. Then he was tested the following Tuesday, but that was 7 days after he got the original notice. So you need to get the forms in promptly, because as we just discussed, some of these drugs can clear in 24 to 48 hours.
Wow. Yeah. So there's plenty of loopholes you could get around by,
When you
you know,
see people dragging their
prolong-
feet and
yeah.
not enrolling and giving excuses, they're likely tapering off drugs, waiting for the drugs to clear before they enroll.
In your opinion, if a fighter turned down VADA drug testing, they say no for no reason whatsoever, most likely they dirty, right?
I would say that the media needs to be all over them asking why you're not doing the testing, and especially if the A side's willing to pay for it, or they're dictating that there's going to be testing. And why do you drag your heels? Why do you not do the testing? Seems like you have something to hide.
And to eliminate that issue, shouldn't VADA drug testing start as soon as fighters start negotiating instead of when they sign the contract? If you want to fight, you need to agree to VADA drug testing right now before we even negotiate. Would that eliminate some of the issue?
I don't know how you enforce that. How do you enforce when there is no fight that the testing start? Who's going to pay for it? I don't think the promoter is going to pay for it. I will tell you, my experience is this testing by VADA is fighter driven. It's not the promoters that want this testing. They don't want testing because there's been several cases. Lamont Peterson, Andre Berto, where they've invested $250,000 to $500,000 in promoting these fights, and then somebody pops positive. They lose all that money. So they're certainly not looking to have more testing. The promoters themselves, there's a financial incentive there to not do testing. It comes from the boxers forcing, and they either pay themselves or have a sponsor that pays, or they demand that the promoter pays. But the testing is boxer driven. It's not promoter driven.
What a lot of people want to know is how much gains from cycling off steroids does a fighter benefit fight night? Is it by like 20%, 25% approximately? Does that boost his stamina, speed, power? Do you have any idea how much benefits they receive from cycling off PEDs if they do 8-week VADA drug testing?
So they can train longer, more repetition, faster, harder punches. And when you do that over a period of months during a training camp, of course the benefits are going to show up and you're going to perform better on fight night. So let's put it this way. What in my history, back in 2001 and 2, I helped a world-class sprinter named Tim Montgomery. They called him Tiny Tim. And he weighed 148 pounds. And we had a whole team of experts. Charlie Francis, the coach for Ben Johnson, was the track coach. Milos Sarchev, a professional bodybuilder, was involved in the strength and conditioning. And of course, we were using a whole array of performance enhancing drugs, something called the Clear, which is a modified, testosterone, insulin, EPO, thyroid, growth hormone, etc. And he gained, in 8 weeks of training, he gained from 148 to 176, 28 pounds. So his bench press increased from baseline was 265, and after 8 weeks he bench pressed 345. So you're talking an average in gains of 10 pounds per week for 2 months. Now thereafter, he ran indoors and won the silver medal at the World Championships. Then outdoors, we cut him back down. He actually competed indoors at 168, 20 pounds over. And then at outdoors, he competed at 160, where he also won the silver medal as well. But the point I'm trying to make is these are very powerful drugs. It's virtually, you can pick the right mom and dad, and that's important. But the gains that you make from using drugs, you wouldn't want to fight a guy that's on a full array of performance enhancing substances.
So the closer you can get away with it to fight night, cycling off steroids, the more benefits they will receive. Let's say I cycled off steroids 4 weeks before a fight for my upcoming fight, and then my partner, he cycled off PEDs 8 weeks before his fight. How much more benefit will I gain from taking PEDs than he does?
Well, the closer you can get to the fight, the better and greater the gains that you're going to retain. So this is why you see guys that drag their feet and don't sign up right away. And there have been guys in the past that have fought some of the snack fighters, and we have to chase them down. And they wait and they don't send in the forms and they give you excuses and blah, 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 blah. And that's because they want an opportunity for these drugs to clear their system, because the testers know that the minute that you sign that contract, oftentimes they're waiting on the side of the stage at the press conference, or they're there within 24 to 48 hours, because they understand that sometimes boxers miscalculate the taper period.
How long PEDs stay in your system? And does that vary for different PEDs?
Of course, it varies for different PEDs. And let me explain now, so people understand. Boxers or others who are subjected to testing, for the most part, are not doing anabolic steroids. They're doing testosterone. And the reason is because your body manufactures testosterone. It's an endogenous hormone. It's more difficult to differentiate between what your body creates and what you take from outside.
How long does that stay in your system? Doses of testosterone, PEDs, small doses of it. If they try to minimize the time span that it stays in your system in case they get random drug tested and they want to pass it. So what is the time span of that staying in your system? A week, 2 weeks, if you take small doses of testosterone?
Well, let's talk about a recent positive. The guy from Venezuela that was supposed to fight Benavidez is coming up here on the 13th of November. I can't pronounce his name, but
Physique
tested positive for EPO. Okay. Now, how long it takes to clear the system first depends upon the method of administration. If you inject it in your quadricep or you inject it into the adipose or fat tissue in your stomach, and depending upon the dose, if you do a normal dose, like typically the way it works is you do it what they call a therapeutic dosage initially, which means 3 times a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, for 2 weeks. And that's to build up your red blood cell count. Thereafter, you reduce, you only take it 1 time a week. Now, when they're microdosing, instead of the 3 times or the 1 time, they take and divide that total dose and they do it every day. So they do smaller amounts. If you do it, so by adipose tissue or like they do growth hormone or in your stomach, 43 hours, it's been shown. If you do it by IV, 19 hours, which means if you're doing a smaller dosage and you're timing it correctly, it can probably clear your system in 8 to 10 hours. So if you do it at night, by the time the testers come in the morning, you're going to be clear.
Well, that's going to be extremely difficult to catch a person like that that's doing that, though.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And like I say, what happens is that the boxers think that once they've passed that time on their whereabouts form that they've given for 1 hour a day that they'll be at the gym or wherever, they will say, okay, well, now I can do the injection so that it clears before the next day when they might come. Problem for that method is they're now showing up at gyms, they're showing up at boxers' houses at night because they understand what they're doing and how they're circumventing. So, I don't know exactly, when they went because I don't have privy to any of that information. But obviously, this Venezuelan 168-pounder got busted for EPO. If you look just a short while back, the same thing happened with Pascal. He got busted for growth hormone and EPO. So you see that this cat and mouse game, that the testers are getting smarter and more boxers are getting busted.
To make it clear, that's during testing, right? But let's say before testing starts, off camp, before camp starts, let's say I'm a fighter, I'm taking small doses of testosterone and PED, so on and so forth. And then I have a fight coming up 8 weeks ahead. I have to sign the contract. I have to agree to VADA drug testing. What's the time span I need to clean my system, to clean my body, so I could pass Bovada drug testing when I do start?
Depends upon the drug, but it's relatively quick. I'm talking a matter of days. So smart people that have experience with this and understand the way it works can definitely become a challenge to catch them using drugs. Let me just elaborate on something that I just thought of. And that is this a lot of this can be fixed by the boxers themselves. And what I'm working on and I've been talking with Margaret Goodman about at VADA is the group of fighters that I work with do VADA testing. So we're talking about Devin Haney, we're talking about Demetrius Andrade, we're talking about Julian Williams, we're talking on and on. I think that Nonito Donaire would be also willing to do this. A program could be put together where they could establish a 24/7, 365 program. There would be, you can't pin down the number, but about monthly or testing, maybe 8 times a year, 10 times a year, random testing